Hi Krishna everyone. Welcome to this week's virtual Sunday feast here at ISKCON Chicago on behalf of Sri Sri Kishore Kishori and Srila Prabhupada. A few quick announcements and then there's going to be a special announcement before turning it over to tonight's speaker, His Grace Jaya Jagannatha Prabhu, whom many of us may be familiar with from his Chicago days. The first is, as many of us are already aware, an announcement went out that the temple is closed for at least the next several weeks due to the increasing COVID situation. So previously, the temple had limited weekend hours, but because of the COVID situation worsening, the temple is now completely closed for visitors in darshan. But there still will be a virtual online only festival for Govardhan Puja, and that's taking place Sunday, November 15th. So you're welcome to join, and that's going to take place from 5 until 8 p.m. There are sponsorship opportunities available for anyone that is inspired to do so. Also, there is a Light the Lamp of Knowledge initiative where we want to distribute the Bhagavad Gita, and so you can read, distribute, and sponsor, and you can get more information on that on the ISKCON Chicago website, and that also takes place on November 15th, and registration is required. There's also going to be on November 21st a virtual Rangoli competition. So there will be, registration is required, and by November 19th, you can get more specific information on how to register either through the temple email or the website iskonchicago.com. Finally, I'll turn it over to His Grace Balaram Prabhu for a short address to the congregation before turning it over to Jaya Jagannath Prabhu, who is going to be continuing our Brilliant as the Sun series of Srimad Bhagavatam. He's going to be doing an overview of 2nd Canto, 5th chapter, The Cause of All Causes. But before that, I'll turn it over to Balaram Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So again, I'll just offer praise to our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So thank you, Yashodandan Prabhu. So yesterday, I'm sure most of you received a email that went out mostly to our congregation, and I think it probably went out even wider than Chicago. So I think I'm not going to drill through the announcement itself. I think the message from our GBC, His Grace Anuttama Prabhu, was clear. You know, our dear, personally for me, my dear friend, so many years, Her Grace Imangi Mataji, she stepped down as a temple president and moving on to doing bigger and better things in the near future. The interim, Radharaman Prabhu and myself will be acting in the capacity of the board of directors. That's our current role within the ISKCON Chicago setup. The GBC requested us to, in the interim period, till he finds a suitable candidate, temple president, to run the affairs. He requested us to oversee some of the matters. So just so everybody is aware, so there isn't going to be any major big changes coming through. You know, Himangi Mataji did an awesome job, fantastic job in putting a lot of effort on many fronts, both inside the temple and outside in the congregation. So things will be flowing very smoothly, definitely to her credit. We coming in, we just have to make sure that, you know, things run the way it was running before. So we are not planning to make any major changes, and from the congregation side, you won't see any big difference, if I can put it that way. As the temple is in lockdown, there is no darshan open for anybody, and we did that primarily for the reason of safety of the temple residents and also those who come and visit. The numbers of COVID cases are rising exponentially. So we thought it's wise to do this, take this decision. But again, there will be virtual celebrations, the virtual Damodarashtakam that will happen Sunday. Next Sunday, there's Govardhan Puja. So that will also be, the temple residents are going to celebrate. And I think most of us can be virtually reminisce the awesome festival that will be put out without a lot of devotees, but we can all be participating virtually. So the closing comment is if you have any questions, concerns, or anything regarding the announcement, I would highly recommend that you reach out to Radharaman Prabhu or myself, because sometimes there's a lot of chatter that happens, and it could be unhealthy for a lot of us. So best is you talk to us. You can also write to our GBC if you so desire. But otherwise, we are here to help, serve you all in any way. And again, feel free to reach out to us. And I hope this beautiful month that we are in, Kartik, it brings a lot of devotion into our heart, and also, we can pass that on to the ones or those who are devoid of that. So let's keep the festivities continuing in our own hearts, at the same time within our setup of our home. The temple is not available, but we have spent so much time and energy in the temple all these years. So the virtual celebration will continue. But please be mindful of that, because we don't want to have you come to the temple to find out the temple is closed. So there is, I think, enough communication that has went out. So just be mindful of that. So thank you very much. I just want to make sure we get this message out. If there's any questions, concerns, you can reach out to us. Now I will pass on the microphone to His Grace Jai Jagannath Prabhu for his wonderful talk this evening. Hare Krishna.
Hari. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for having me. ISKCON Chicago. I'm very grateful to be here. I think I'll begin by doing a Mangala Charana. As you all know, the Mangala Charana is performed to remove obstacles to the completion of a task. It is also to invoke auspiciousness and also to invoke one's Ishtadevata, one's worshipable deity, to offer obeisances to the deity and the preceptors of the line, to remove obstacles to one being a transparent conduit of the knowledge of the absolute coming through one's being. So it is very important that the Mangala Charan be performed. So I will also do a Mangala Charan. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadhvetam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tata Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Vanchakalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhyarevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Janmadhyasya yatonvayati taratarshtarate shabhigyaswara tene brahma hridaya radhikavaye muyanti asuraya tejo varim mridhamyata vinimayo yatra trisargo mrisha Dhamna svena sadana rasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi. Hare Krishna. So we're discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, chapter 5 right here. So I don't know what this series is or how much context you require for the chapter, but I'll give a little bit background that leads up to the chapter 5. So as you know, the first canto ends with Parikshit Maharaj fasting until the death, surrounded by many of the sages. And he put one question to them: what is the duty of all men, especially the dying man? What should he hear? What should he remember? What should he speak about, chant? And what should he not hear? And what should he not remember? And what should he not speak about? Very pertinent question. He had placed it to all the sages who had come to visit him. Some of the sages were practitioners of Karma Kanda. Some sages were practitioners of Gyan Yoga. Some were practitioners of Ashtanga Yoga. Maybe some there also Bhakti Yoga. So they could not come to any conclusion. Suddenly Shukadeva Goswami appears in the scene, and they all unanimously agree that he would have the appropriate answer for Shukadeva Goswami. So Parikshit Maharaj surrenders to Shukadeva Goswami, and the first canto comes to a close. So in the beginning of the second canto, Shukadeva Goswami is giving the answer to this question: what is the duty of all men, especially the dying man? And his conclusion is that the duty of all men, especially the dying man, is to hear about, chant about, and remember Vishnu. Maybe I pull up the particular verse here. This is 2 Canto, chapter 1, verse 5. I'll just pull up the verse. Maybe I can share my screen here. You can see. Share screen. I think you all should be able to see that. So he says this thing here. Tasma bharata sarvatma bhagavan ishvaro hari shrotavya kirtitavyascha smartavyascha tata bhayam. For those who desire ichita abhayam, for those who desire fearlessness. So the material world is naturally characterized by fear, because according to Bhagavat philosophy, the soul is turned away from God. So just as when one is turned away from the sun, one sees one's shadow. So when one is turned away from God, one is immersed in the shadowy existence of matter. And what follows that absorption is fear. There are nice verses there. Bhayam dutiya viniveshatashat. Ishare pe tasha viparyo ashmitihi. Tamaya to buddha abhajatam. Bhaktya kayesham gurudeva tatma. This very famous verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It mentions the disease and the solution to the disease in one verse. So first, the disease is mentioned, Ishare pe tasha. Ishare pe tasha means to be turned away from God. What is the effect that takes place when one is turned away from God? Then there's ashmritihi. So ashmritihi means the loss of memory. So in context here, loss of memory means one loses one's own self-awareness also. Because the soul is part and parcel of God. Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita that the soul is part and parcel of the Godhead. So to be turned away from God, in a sense, is to be turned away from your own self. To be alienated from God is to be alienated from your own self-nature. So being alienated from our own self-nature, this is called ashmritihi. Then what happens? Srimad Bhagavatam says viparya. Viparya means just the opposite. So alienated from your own self-nature, you identify with the nature that is not yourself. So that is the body-mind complex. We have this body and mind. We identify. This is called viparya. Because of such identification, there is dvitiya abhiniveshita. So dvitiya abhiniveshita means absorption in the second, something that's not Krishna. It means basically we become absorbed in all non-essential things. And what is non-essential things? Basically anything in this world is more or less having that quality. Of course, some things appear to be very, very important for the time being, like elections and all that. But actually it is all temporary distraction of the soul who has lost his own self to the material nature and lost vision of God. So this is called dvitiya abhiniveshita. And the effect of this dvitiya abhiniveshita, if we are absorbed in the matter, is bhaya. So bhaya means fear. So this fearfulness, if you think about it deeply, every movement in this world is informed or inspired by the fear. Everything. There are different types of fear. We don't always consciously think of it, but there are many types of fear there. The fear of survival, that's a very prominent fear. And then even if you get your survival business together, fear of not meeting the status quo of your community or of your country, that is a fear. Fear of being rejected, fear of not being accepted, fear of not fitting in, fear of not belonging. There's so many types of fears that govern the various movements of the jivas in this world. If you think about it deeply, all movement is inspired by the fear. And this is directly correlated to our being turned away from Bhagavan. So this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto says, Tamaya yato. Tamaya yato means this is Maya. Buddha abhajetam. So if you are an intelligent person, then Bhakti Yoga Yesham Guru Deva Tatma. You should do Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Eka Isham. You should do Bhakti Yoga to Krishna, Guru Deva Tatma. Understanding that the Guru is the Deva. Deva means like the worshipable personality. And the Atma, one's very own self. And that way you do Bhakti Yoga, worshiping and pleasing the Guru. So this is the secret from getting out of Maya, getting out of this problem. So Shukadeva Goswami, he giving a similar verse here. Ichata abhayam. For those who desire fearlessness, then they should perform Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyas. They should do hearing, chanting, remembering of Bhagavan, who is Sarvatma, who is Ishvara. And you should hear, chant, and remember Hari. And these rest of these are like qualifiers. This Hari is the soul of everyone. He is Bhagavan, having all the wonderful qualities. He is Ishvara, he is the controller. So this is his answer to Shukadeva Goswami's question, that you should hear, chant, and remember Bhagavan. And amongst this hearing, chanting, and remembering, he specifically focuses in on chanting. So if you see 211, there's also a very famous verse. Etane vidyamananam ichatam akuto bhayam yoginam nirpanir nitam hare namanu kirtanam. So in this verse, he's saying that whether one is devoid of the material desires, or they have a lot of desires, ichatam, or they have desire for fearlessness also, as I mentioned here also, the yogis, then in all cases, they should do Hare Nama Anukirtana. So that means of these different angas of bhakti, then the most important anga is to do this Sankirtan of the names of Krishna. If one desires to be, either he is free from all the desires, nirvidyamananam, or he has all sorts of desires, ichata. Ichata means he has all sorts of material desires. Akuto bhayam, or I don't think this is, or yoginam, I guess the word yoginam is taken here. Yoginam means he has desire for liberation here. The fearless way, the doubtless and fearless way for everyone, whatever your desire may be, is to do this Sankirtan. So amongst the angas, he had mentioned 3, hearing, chanting, remembering. But of those 3, he mentioned specifically Nam Sankirtan. So this is the answer to the question. And a few verses he's given the answer. What is the duty of all men, especially the dying man? So the duty is he should perform Bhakti Yoga, especially that bhakti characterized by chanting the holy names of Krishna. Mahaprabhu has also said similar thing in his instructions to Sanatana Goswami. To Sanatana Goswami he speaks this thing. Bhajanera Madhya Shesha Navavidya Bhakti Krishna Prema Krishna Dhite Dhare Mahashakti. So Mahaprabhu has also mentioned this to Sanatana Goswami, that out of all the forms of worship of Krishna, the Navavidya Bhakti, the 9 angas of bhakti are considered to be particularly very, very powerful, Mahashakti, having great potency for delivering Krishna Prema, divine love of God, and after that, to deliver God himself. Tara Madhye Savrasheshta Nam Sankirtan. But of these 9, Mahaprabhu says the best is Nam Sankirtan. Their aparad Nam Lile Paya Premadan. If this Nam Sankirtan is done without the aparad, then it can give the wealth of love, premadan, the wealth of love. So, like this Siddhanta that Nam Sankirtan is the means of coming out of fearfulness. It is the means of the duty of the Dharma. This is all Srimad Bhagavatam Siddhanta. So Shukadeva Goswami has also mentioned it. Having told this thing, after that, Shukadeva Goswami goes on to contrast this conclusion of bhakti with other practices, because there are so many sages there in front of. So they would also be wondering, well, what about Ashtanga Yoga? So many yogis are there, they're wondering, what about Ashtanga Yoga? And some karmis, they are there. Karmis, I don't mean in a pejorative way. Karmis means they follow karma kanda. Some, they're also there. They say, hey, what about karma kanda? That is also the method, right? So after this, verse 11, Shukadeva Goswami begins to speak about other processes to demonstrate that even for these other processes to become successful, they need to be supported by Bhakti Yoga. So first he begins with a discussion on, I'll stop my screen. First he begins with a discussion on Ashtanga Yoga for the rest of chapter 1, concluding that this Ashtanga Yoga becomes successful by Bhakti Yoga. And then he continues his discussion on Ashtanga Yoga in the beginning of the 2nd chapter, also coming to the same conclusion that this yoga becomes successful by Bhakti Yoga. Then in the middle of the 3rd chapter, in the beginning of the 3rd chapter, he speaks about karma kanda, and he actually speaks about it rather pejoratively there, saying that this karma kanda is actually ultimately futile because it is temporary. But if you have some desires for material happiness, then you can do all sorts of karma kandic rites. He mentions worship this devata, this other devata for this thing, another devata for that thing. He gives a long list. But then he says, actually, if one is intelligent, this famous verse is coming. Akama sarvo kamava moksha kama udhariti tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purushambaram. He says, but actually if someone is udhariti, so udhariti means they have the broad-minded intelligence. They have broad intelligence. They can think very deeply about things. Then whether they have all the desires, sarva kama, or they are akama without any desires, or they are moksha kama, they have desire for moksha. In all cases, they should perform bhakti yoga exclusively. Tivrena bhakti yogena. Yajeta purushamparam. They should exclusively perform bhakti yoga to Krishna. And that way, all their desires can be fulfilled just by that bhakti yoga. So in this way, the whole idea is that by positive and negative affirmation, he wants to establish the conclusion of bhakti, which is what he has done in these first 3 chapters. So after concluding this thing, Shukadeva Goswami makes conclusion. Sutta Goswami is telling the story to the sages. So then Shamika Rishi, having heard Shukadeva Goswami's opening dissertation to Parikshit Maharaj, he very much appreciates the Siddhanta and says, he begins to glorify bhakti by the negative affirmation. Negative affirmation means when you speak of the consequences of not doing something to establish the importance of doing something. It's called angaya vyatireka. So anvaya means like the positive affirmation. For example, do bhakti yoga and you can get love of God. Do bhakti yoga and all your desires will be fulfilled. Do bhakti yoga and you can go to heaven. So this is called anvaya. This is a positive affirmation to convince you to do bhakti yoga. But negative affirmation also is there to give the same conclusion. If you don't do bhakti yoga, then you'll become degraded. If you don't do bhakti, you'll go down to the hellish regions. If you don't do bhakti, in this way, by the negative affirmation, you also become convinced to do the thing, right? So all shastras, they take the strategy, anvaya vyatire, not even shastra only, even modern advertisement, they also do like this, right? They do anvaya and then vyatireka, some negative thing, affirmation, they convince you to do the thing they want, right? So Shonak Rishi, he begins criticizing those who do not do bhakti to demonstrate that he's understood the conclusion that bhakti yoga is actually the duty for all men. So he's, this famous set of verses are there. Those who don't see the deity, they have eyes, like the eyes printed on the plumes of peacocks. They don't hear about Krishna. Then those ears are like the holes in which many snakes, dangerous entity enters inside. The tongue which does not speak about Krishna is like a prostitute or like a frog, only inviting the death. The legs which do not go to the temple for other reasons other than COVID, that is. Then those legs are like the tree trunks. What is the use of such legs? So in this way, he begins to criticize those who do not do bhakti limb by limb. And after criticizing them limb by limb, he then criticizes their heart. Tarashmasaram hridaya patedam. Now, grihat manya harinamadeya. That heart is certainly made of stone. That even when they chant with the concentration, they do not experience navikreye tato yata vikaro. Their hearts do not experience any transformation. They remain as it is. So their hearts must be made of the stone. So those people who don't do bhakti, he's criticized them 100%. So after making this criticism, he wants to hear more about this bhakti yoga. He wants to hear more of the conversation between Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, because he says they are both great devotees. So since they are both great devotees, they must have really wonderful discussions. So let us hear more and more of these discussions amongst these great devotees. There's one nice verses here. Now I'm just remembering it. When Prithu, later on in the Bhagavatam, fourth canto, Prithu Maharaj will meet the four Kumaras. So after meeting the four Kumaras, I think this is chapter 22 of the fourth canto. Let me see here. There's one very nice verse. Yeah, he receives the Kumaras very nicely, and they're very pleased with how Prithu has received them. And he has prostrated himself before them and seeking answers to his question. His question was very simple. For people who are attached to the sense gratification, I'm attached to the sense gratification. For those who are attached to the sense gratification, then is there any hope for them? That is actually their question. If you were to ask Prahlad Maharaj this question, he may give a very heavy answer. This famous verse is there. Matirna Krishna Paratasvatova. Mito, what is that? Matirna Krishna Paratasvatova. Grihavrata, I'm missing a word here. Paratasvatova, I'm missing. Grihavrata, Adanta Gobe Vishatamta Mishram, Puna Shavita Charvanana. So Prahlad Maharaj is saying for people who are Grihavratana, which means they are very much, Grihavrata literally means they have a vow, vrata, to enjoy in a house, griha. But the griha is often a symbol of material enjoyment, and the Shastra, especially Vedantic literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam. So for the people who have that griha vrata, they're very determined to be happy in the material world. Then they cannot get this Krishna consciousness. Matirna Krishna, Paratasotova, Mito Abhipadyeta Griha Vratana. They will not develop this Krishna mati, neither by their own efforts, neither by someone else's efforts, neither by joint effort. It will not happen. Adandago Vishatam to Mishran. Their senses are out of control. Gradually, they will go to the hell. Puna Punash Charva to Charva Nanam. And they're chewing that which has already been chewed. So if you ask Prahlad Maharaj this question, it's a little bit heavy. But Prithu Maharaj, he also asked a similar question. Is there any hope for people who are enmeshed in the pursuit of the sense objects? So he very humbly presented himself before the Kumars, even though he himself is a great Vaishnava. And they were very pleased. Oops, share screen. Okay. So they were very pleased with his question. And so they said this particular verse. This very nice. Oh, no, this is not the verse. Yeah, this one. Verse number 19. This very nice verse. Sangama kalu sadhunam ubhayesham chasamataha yat sambhashana samprashna sarvesham vitanotisham. I'll just read translation. When there's a congregation of devotees, their discussions, questions, and answers become conclusive to both the speaker and the audience. Thus, such a meeting is beneficial for everyone's real happiness. So the idea here is when great devotees get together, and there are so many people surrounding these great devotees, but only these two devotees, they're having conversation with one another. So yasam bhashana samprashna. If you shall hear their discussion, the questions and answers amongst them, then that discussion amongst great devotees, sarvesham vitanotisham, it brings the bliss to everyone in the surrounding area also. They also get the bliss of that. So Shonak Rishi wants to know more of the conversation with Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. So what did they speak? What did they speak? So then Sutta Goswami continues the discussion. And he says that Parikshit Maharaj was very happy to hear this Siddhanta because he himself was also a great devotee of Krishna. So he was very happy to hear this Siddhanta, to worship Krishna. So he asked a question to Shukadeva Goswami. This is at the beginning of chapter 4. And that question he asked was about the creation. Immediately he wanted to know about the creation of the material universes. So Shukadeva Goswami, in order to answer his question, he performs a Mangala charan. I performed Mangala charan early in the class. So he also performs a long Mangala charan. That takes up the whole chapter 4 actually. Again, the Mangala charan was performed to receive blessings from the Ishta Devata to describe a very difficult subject matter, namely the subject matter of the material universes. Having performed Mangala Charana and received empowerment from the Ishta to perform that seva of describing the creation, he says that actually this question was asked by Narada to Lord Brahma toward the beginning of the creation. So in the beginning of chapter 5, it is actually a conversation between Narada and Brahma. And this conversation is spoken by Shukadeva Goswami to answer the question of Parikshit Maharaj concerning how the Lord has created the material universe. So that's how we get to chapter 5. I hope you understand the progression there, a very simple progression there. So in the beginning of chapter 5, Narada Muni is asking the question. I pull it up here. Starting with verse number 2. We're just going to have to do some touchdown points because this is actually a very technical chapter. So I don't know how one's supposed to speak on this at a Sunday feast, but okay, let me share this. So Narada Muni, he greets his father, Lord Brahma, and he is saying that his father is the knower of all things. He understands Paramatma, he understands Jiva, he understands Maya. All these tattvas he knows. So he has some question for him. So in this verse 2, the question is given. He wants to know about the tattva of the universe. Ya rupam ya adishtanam yata shrishtamidham prabhu. Yat sangstan ya param yachcha tattvam bhada tattvataha. So he says, my dear father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? So there's about 6 or 7 questions here. Yad Rupam, he wants to know what is the characteristics of the universe. Yad Adishtanam, he wants to know what is the support for the universe? How is it supported? Is it its own support, or is there some powerful being who is actually supporting that universe? Yata Shrishtam Idham Prabhu, how is this universe created? What is the cause of this universe? Is it an effect? How is it coming into being? Yat Sangstang, when the universe is unmanifest, where does it reside? Or, at the time of destruction, or where does it go? He wants to know. Yat Param, who is superior to this universe? Tat Tat Dwam Vada Tattutaha. So you please describe the symptoms of this universe. You describe that tattva. He wants to know about the universe. So this is his question to his father. So it's a question that very much matches Parikshit Maharaj's question. This is why Shukadeva Goswami has brought up this particular incident. So after asking the question, Lord Brahma is Narada Muni begins glorifying Lord Brahma as if he was the personality of Godhead. Saying, actually, we know that it is you only who are the creator of the universes. You are your own shelter. You have your own power. You do everything independently. And this way, he offers many, many verses glorifying Lord Brahma as the Godhead himself, as the supreme personality of Godhead. But he has one doubt. He says, my father, we understand that you have performed the austerity. You perform austerity in order to bring about the manifestation of the universe. As we hear early in the 3rd canto, Lord Brahma was born into the darkness. And at that time, he heard the sound vibration tapa to perform the austerities. And so he performed austerities for many hundreds and thousands of years. And then only after performing the austerity did he get the understanding from another source, the Supreme Lord, how to create the universe. So Narada Muni said, I understand you to be God himself, the independent, self-manifest, self-effulgent Godhead himself, but you perform the austerities in order to create. So this bewilders us because austerities are performed to acquire some merit. That is why we perform the austerities. Some merit is required, so austerities are performed to get the merit. Just like we have this word kriti, right? What is that? Chaturvida bhajanti manjana sukriti no. Not Arjuna. This is from chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita. Or namam dushkriti namudha from chapter 7. Then you have dushkriti and sukriti. So kriti, the word kriti means meritorious work or action. And then sukriti means you use your meritorious acts nicely. And dushkriti means you have some merit, but you squander it in some way. That is the meaning, dushkriti, sukriti. An example of dushkriti like Hiranyakashipu, he performed severe austerity, so he got some kriti, right? He got some kriti, the merit of that austerity. He got a lot of powers in order to subjugate the universe. But he is dushkriti because he squandered that dushkriti as an asura, trying to challenge the authority of God. So when you do austerity, it's because you need to acquire some kriti, some meritorious, I'm not finding the right word, criteria? No, that's not the word I'm looking for anyway. You acquire some merit in order to do something. So Lord Brahma has performed some austerity to get the kriti so he can create. So Narada Muni says, if you are actually the independent Supreme Lord, as I thought you were, why do you have to perform the austerity to get the kriti? So this is great. This is confusing to me. So can you please clear up the confusion? So he asked so many questions and then he explained all these things. So after that, Lord Brahma is very happy to hear his questions, of course. And he's particularly happy to hear his doubt about his own position. So that'll become section 2 of this 2nd canto. I'm going to share my screen here again. Okay. Yeah, chapter 5. So Lord Brahma begins to speak. This is starting in verse 9. And he wants to clear something up. He wants to say, actually, I'm not God. So that is, actually, you are Narada Muni. You are knowing everything. Out of your mercy, you have only referred to me in this way. And out of your mercy, you have put this doubt so that you can clear up the confusion for others who would not be aware of my position. So he says this thing to Narada Muni, that thank you for your question. You are showing kindness to me. Actually, I'm not the Supreme Lord. Let me just clear it up right now. I have been inspired to create after seeing the personality of Godhead do the creation. So you know this is coming from the second verse of the Bhagavatam. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaya. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaya means the Adhikavi, that is Lord Brahma. He was given the Brahma, the Vedas, at the beginning of creation by the Supreme Lord. And being his intelligence thus being inspired by the Supreme Lord, he was able to perform the activity of creation. So his acts of creation follow the acts of creation of the Supreme Lord. And he gets the intelligence how to do that also. Teshan Satatayuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. Tadavi Buddha Yogam Tang Yenama Puyantita, Krishna saying, Nigita, that I give the intelligence to those who worship me. So he worshiped for so many thousands of celestial years by the austerity. And then he got the kriti from that devotional act in the form of the Supreme Lord giving him the vision how to create the universe. So that was the first thing. He clears it up. I am not God. I received inspiration from the Supreme Lord himself from within my heart. But so many people say you are God. Narada Muni may object. So in verse 10, he said, yeah, actually, they get confused about it. Because seeing my power, they think, and not knowing the Supreme Lord, then they think like that about me. That is, I show some extraordinary prowess. And so not knowing the actual position of God, they get confused about it. Just like during Prabhupada's time, and not only Prabhupada's time, even now, people get confused about whether or not there's a God when they see the wondrous activities of technology. And some explanation is given by some scientist who himself is atheist, that we don't need God. There's no need for God. We have technology, and then technology is able to do such wonderful things that it appears that the universe is not able to do the way that God has created it. So in this way, many people get confused, seeing the prowess of some powerful person and not knowing the Supreme Lord. This happens all the time. So Lord Brahma says this is not astonishing that people are confused. They see my power and they think that I'm actually the Supreme Lord. But actually this type of thinking is due to Maya. Let me share my screen. One famous verse comes in this particular passage actually. Narada Muni say, but Lord Brahma, everyone knows that you are, Jagat Guru. You are the Jagat Guru. Even now you can meet so many Jagat Gurus. In India also you meet quite a few Jagat Gurus. They're there, but we know you're a Jagat Guru for everyone. So why are you speaking this way? This must be due to your humility. So Lord Brahma says this verse here, and then the next one. These next two verses are actually quite famous verses. Tasmai namo bhagavate vasudevaya dhimahi. I offer my obeisances and meditate on Lord Vasudeva. Ya Maya ya Durjaya ya. Due to his invincible Maya. Mavadanti Jagat Guru. People say that I am the Jagat Guru. They attribute some great power to this person. And again, Lord Brahma, no one may be believing in today, but now some other material person is showing some prowess, so people think he is Jagat Guru. They say like this. He said, but this is actually all due to Maya. And then the next verse, Vilajamanaya yasya stanto ikshapate amuya vimohita vikantante mamaham iti durtiya. So there's a very famous verse in the Bhagavatam. This particular verse is quoted a lot by the Acharyas. It says, Maya is one who is afraid or who is ashamed to stand in the eye path of the Supreme Lord. The word amuya means Maya, the bewildering energy. So she is vilajamanaya. She is ashamed to stantum, stand, ikshapate, in the eye path of God. That means that she does not come in front of God, or she does not come near him. But the rest of us, vimohita vikantante mamaham iti durdiya. For the rest of us, she is standing in our eye path very nicely. She is existing there nicely, and she's bewildering us. Vimohita vikantante. How is she bewildering us? Or what is the proof that we are bewildered? Vikantante, we speak all nonsense. Mamaham iti dhurdiya, with the intelligence that I am this body and these things are mine. So this is the evidence that we are in Maya. So it's very interesting that, well, depending on how dorky you are, if you're a geek, but it's very interesting that the question is about the Maya Shakti and how the Lord, through his Maya Shakti, brings into existence the material world. But it's also due to that Maya Shakti that our vision of that absolute reality and even of our own soul is obscured. And not knowing the source of the existence and not knowing the source of even our very self, not even knowing our own nature because of this Maya, then we become confused. We already mentioned this earlier in the class, Dvitiya Viniveshita. So the only way to understand the truth of the matter is to hear from those who are not so bewildered by this energy. Earlier on in the Bhagavatam and Vyasa Samadhi, this famous section is there, where Vyasa has gone into his Samadhi and he sees the jivas bewildered by Maya. Yaya samohita jiva atmanam shri gunatmakam paropi manyate anartam takritam cha abhipatyate. So he says there that the jivas, yasa mohita jivas, they are bewildered by Maya. What is the nature of the bewilderment? Atmanan shri gunatmakam paropi. Although they are superior to matter, they think that they are a product of matter. Atmanan shri gunatmakam. And this thinking is called anartha. This is the meaning of the word anartha. The thinking is called anartha. And after that, takritan shabipat, all their suffering begins after that. So it's a very extraordinary thing that Maya Shakti can alienate us from our own self-nature. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, imagine being fire itself, but not knowing that you burn or that you have burning potency. Even though you're a walking fireball and you walk around, you have the heat, the light is coming from you. It's really, in a sense, self-evident, but you're not aware of it. It's kind of, it's actually inconceivable how you can be something, but be obscured from your own self-nature. So the jiva is obscured from his own self-nature because of this Maya. And his nature is also as part of God. We've already quoted this verse. So he's also obscured from his relationship with God by this same Maya Shakti. And so because of this being alienated from his own self and from God due to Maya, then he becomes confused about who is the proper object of reverence, who is the Jagat Guru, who is the worshipable person. And he cannot know that unless he's able to hear from someone who is not so bewildered by the Maya Shakti. So this is the beginning of this particular section. Krishna said this in Gita also. Mamaya, what is that? Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya darataya mameva ye prapadyante mayamitam tarantite. So Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita that this Maya of mind composed of the three gunas is basically insurmountable. So he says, Mama Maya, it is my Maya. So this Maya, she won't come in front of me, but she is always dancing in front of the eyes of the conditioned souls. So they're not able to understand their own nature, and they're not able to understand me. Only if they surrender unto me, only if they surrender unto me, that can then become free from this Maya. But you just said that the nature of this Maya is that it alienates us from ourselves and also from God. So how can someone surrender unto you? So that means you have to come in contact with the Shabda that reveals the truth of the nature of your own self and the truth of God. Without this Shabda, there is no other way to understand. That is why consciousness remains somewhat of a mystery. Even for modern science, this consciousness is a mystery. Even though we are the conscious person, but we do not know our own nature. And Krishna himself has also described consciousness as achintya. So it is not possible to know. Only if you come in contact with the Shabda can it be understood. Lord Brahma himself was the example of that. He took birth. He was also bewildered about who he was and what was his self-nature until the Shabda came to him from within his heart, from Krishna. And then that Shabda gave the revelation. What is the reality? So similarly, what is this universe? No one can actually know about it. Of course, science has, for example, science has been able to do some things, manipulate the matter. They have many theories, of course, that are more or less impossible to prove, but they've come to prominence because of, money and all that. But they have also been able to produce many things that gives people a lot of confidence that science and all these things can give us proper understanding of the universe. But as it is being seen now, and it will continue to be seen in the future hereafter, the things they're producing also actually bringing more pain than it does good overall. Krishna, Prahlad is saying, the remedy for dukkha is itself dukkha. So this will be seen, it is already being seen, now will be seen more. But the basic idea here is that it's impossible to understand the nature of this world unless you hear the shabda, the sound coming from those who are not conditioned or coming from Krishna. So Brahma is wanting to give that shabda to Narada Muni. So after clearing up the problem, the problem of imposing the glory of God onto someone who is part of matter, Brahma in this case, after clearing up, no, I'm not that personality. That is due to the Maya that you speak like this. So you have to, after clearing up, then he begins to describe the nature of the universe for the rest of the chapter. Just continue on this one idea because my time is almost up. But the verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam goes on to say, so because of this anartha, we're obscure from ourselves because of this Maya Shakti. She produces anartha for the soul. So he's obscure from himself. So how can this be fixed? So Vyasadeva is giving the remedy or answer for this also. So he says, anartha upashaman saksha bhakti yoga adokshaje. Lokasya ajanato vedwan chakre satata samhitam. So he says that this anartha can be mitigated by direct bhakti yoga unto the personality of Godhead. That's what we've been hearing. By direct bhakti yoga, this anartha can be mitigated. Otherwise, it cannot. Because if the anartha exists, then there's no way to solve any problem. I know everyone, like now, the president has finally been announced. And I see so many friends also, they are having celebrations and saying how happy they are, how relieved they are, and this and that and the other. But this is all folly, because as long as you have the anartha, the problem will go on increasing. The president-elects, they have their anarthas, and the people who are voting for them, they have their anarthas, and the people who are not voting for them, they also have their anartha problem. And this problem is like poison in the blood. It produces the boils. So you can cut off the boil, but if the poison is in the blood, the boils will continue to come back. It's very painful. So people don't even know they have this anartha problem. So how you can solve this anartha? Then that is by direct bhakti yoga. Lokasya ajanato vidwan. But the people of this world, they don't know this. Lokasya ajanata. They don't know that they have an anartha problem. Everyone thinks they're so smart, so nice. They're, I'm a good person. But this is actually okay. We don't want to say you're not good. But we all have a lot to be desired. I think that's the polite way of saying it. We have a lot to be desired because this anartha problem is there. And it can only be removed by this bhakti yoga, but we do not know this. So because we don't know this, Vyasadeva has put together the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chakre Satata Samhitam. He's given this shabda to help us remove this anartha problem, including the false understanding of the universe that we impose onto the universe because of the anartha problem. In this particular chapter, the discussion of the universe is coming because we have misconception about the universe, not only in terms of our relationship to it in terms of enjoyer, which is a misconception, but even in like the structure of the universe, we have so much misconception about it. We impose because of an anartha problem. So we don't know this, so he's given the Srimad Bhagavatam to relieve us of this anartha. Yasyam vai Sriyamananam Krishna Parama Purushe Bhakta Utpadite Pongsa Shoka Moha Bhaya Apa. So we should hear the Srimad Bhagavatam to remove the anartha and also to Bhakti Utpadite Pongsa, to manifest more and more bhakti in the heart, which is actually the solution for everyone. The duty of the dying man, the duty of all men, the way to remove the fear, this bhakti yoga should be done by hearing Bhagavatam, and then bhakti will spring up in the heart. And if that bhakti comes in the heart, there will be no more shoka, moha, or bhaya. So the conclusion here, well, I guess my presentation here is to say that if we want to understand ourselves, which we've been alienated from for a time without beginning, if we want to understand God, and if we want to understand the world itself, the universe, then we have to remove the anartha, which obscures the self-awareness, that obscures the God awareness, and that even obscures the world awareness, even though we're looking at it. We're not understanding it in the proper way. So the only way to get the proper understanding is to remove the anartha, and that comes by hearing the shabda, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the divine sound of the Shastras coming from the great souls, like Lord Brahma, Narada Muni, and those in the disciplic succession. Then if we can remove the anartha problem, then everything becomes, as we like to say this word, sometimes self-reveal or self-manifest. And then having a proper understanding of it, you can establish your proper relationship with it. And in that way become blissful. Otherwise not. So the rest of the chapter 5 is Lord Brahma going into a lot of technical details about the nature of the universe. But we obviously didn't want to cover that part because of Sunday feast class. So we'll stop here. I think I filled up the time. I did the best that I could. And if anyone wants to say anything before we close out here, I don't know. Any question, comment?
Hare Krishna, Jai Jagannath Prabhu. I wasn't seeing anything in the Zoom chat or YouTube chats. So generally, if there are no other questions, then please feel free to share. I generally ask speakers to give a closing statement, sort of one thing you would like us all to walk away with.
You should spend more, if I have to give a closing statement, we should spend more time hearing Shastra than we do with the social media or hearing other ideas that aren't coming from the scripture. That's the purpose of my presentation today. I think our communities in general are becoming arrested by too much association with non-devotees. Before a satsanga, you had to actually go to some place to have the satsanga. But now the satsanga is in the palm of our hands in the form of the phone. As you can see, YouTube and this podcast and that podcast and this social media and that social media. And that way we do a lot of satsanga and we don't understand. The people we hear from, they have anartha. We have our own anarthas. They have anartha. And then we hear from these people with anartha, so it becomes more problematic for us. So we really want to, if we're serious about having a proper orientation of ourselves, of God, of the world, then we have to, at least you can keep like ratio. The ratio of asat sangha to sadhu sangha should be in favor of the sadhu sangha. So there should, more time spent with Shastra and sadhus and the conceptions coming from the sessions, the messages coming from Shastras and sadhus, then that should be heard more than all the other messages. Even other devotees who don't speak from Shastra too much. Because we're all humans, right? We're devotees also, but we're also humans. So we have all of our opinions about things and all that. That is okay. That will go on. But hearing the opinions of conditioned souls is not very useful for us either. So if we have to hear the opinion, we should hear Krishna's opinion, right? He also has his opinions. He said, this is my opinion. So many places in Gita, this is my opinion. So you hear Krishna's opinion, and you hear the opinions of the Bhagavatam, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, more than you hear the opinions of others. Then there may be some hope for us. Otherwise, there won't be that much hope for us. We already have a very difficult situation. And it can only be relieved, according to Bhagavatam, it can only be relieved by this hearing process from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's my closing message, and that's what I wanted to say for the class. To get a proper orientation of self, of the world, and of God, we have to hear from the Shastra more and more and more. So that's my closing message.
Thank you very much, Jai Jagannatha Prabhu, for that nice presentation, especially the context around leading up to chapter 5. So a couple of quick announcements after your session. The first is, stay tuned. We will continue with the Damodar Ashtakam. It will be led by Her Grace Shri Rupa Mataji. And the request for everyone on the Zoom call, you are welcome to turn your videos on, though please remain muted. Just with the delay in sound, call and response, bhajans and kirtans unfortunately don't work so well. The other announcement is next week's speaker will be His Grace Yogeshwara Prabhu. So looking forward to that as well. So please stay on for this rite of Kartik month. Hare Krishna.
Ishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gopure Rajamanam Ishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gopure Rajamanam Ishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasakundalam Gopure Rajamanam Ishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasakundalam Gopure Rajamanam Shwasakam Kani Kam Jagannatha Sita Devam Damodaram Bhakti Shri Radha Damodar ki
Jai. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thus concludes this evening's Sunday Feast program. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.